Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 269 of the Canadian Football Countdown, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network and the Alternative Football Network. We're back. We took a week off last week. Not too bad, I think. We made it through the first 16. Everybody gets a bye week here and there throughout the season. Scheduling conflict. I was feeling a bit under the weather. We couldn't make it work last week, but we are back to preview week 18 in the CFL here. Ryan and Trey here with you this evening. Trey is back as well. It's been a number of weeks since we've seen you here. How are you doing tonight, Trey? Welcome back.
I'm doing pretty good, Ryan, man. I'm hoping to get back into the swing of things here. So let's have some fun. And 3 games, man. So let's actually get this done quick.
Yeah, I mean, we had 3 games on the schedule 2 weeks ago, and I think Adam and I went an hour and 45 minutes. So there's no hope. There's no hope. It'll go an hour and a half. We'll ramble on for forever. See, the problem is when we only have 3 games on the schedule, you become extra my captive audience when it comes to all the stats and numbers for fantasy because I have less games to talk about, so I can talk longer about those. I'll try to keep it short and concise as we talk about the 3 games on the schedule this week. Big trade deadline week in the CFL, and we actually had a trade to talk about as well. We'll talk about that when we get to the team that is playing this. Once we get to their game, we'll talk through that as part of that one. But yeah, previewing week 18 in the CFL. We'll also take comments and questions in our live chat if people pop in here and there throughout the night. Thanks to our presenting sponsor, Game Time TV. You can learn more at GameTimeTV.ca or Facebook.com/GameTimeTVMB. Before we go any further, we also want to acknowledge that the Canadian Football Countdown is brought to you from Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation, as well as from Treaty 4 territory, traditional territory of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis Nation. Want to mention as well, we just passed National Day of Truth and Reconciliation here in Canada. The CFL did its big weekend of games using all the Indigenous logos. I love all of those Indigenous logos. They're so good. I wish the Bombers made that their full-time logo, to be honest. And I know some teams, I think I saw BC is going to be wearing them the rest of the season here in the regular season as well. So great job around the CFL to the teams honoring that important day as well. Check out the Discord if you haven't yet. Now's the time to get in there. Link is in the episode description. It's free to join us over there. We have lots of chatter going on throughout the CFL and the NFL season. If you are a CFL fantasy fan, the Discord is the place to be. We cover the options from each team here on the show each week, but you get so much more info if you go to the Discord because I am posting tons of charts, tons of analytics, things like that in the Discord community every single week. I just added 3-4 new charts to the arsenal last week. That led to some good fantasy plays, so check that out. Trey's also got a lot of betting stuff going on in there. You're big on the NFL bets in the Discord lately, eh?
NFL season is just a different time of year, man. Like, I love the CFL, but 16 games or 14 games in one day, man, that's just... and then this weekend, it's the London game, so the 8 a.m. game.
Oh, who's playing in London?
Oh, Jacksonville and somebody usually.
That's always Jacksonville, isn't it?
They have a contract. They signed their owner signed some big contract that they have to play one a year. So I'm not sure if they're this week or next week.
It's the Jets and Vikings,
right.
Assuming that the 8:30 a.m. game is the one there.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
The Jets and Vikings. Every game overseas is just a dud of an offense when it comes to an offensive game. Everybody's jet lagged. We saw the Jets lose to Bo Nix and his 60 passing yards last week. This game is going to be ugly and low scoring, but it is the Vikings, so I wouldn't be surprised if they put up 40 based on how Sam Darnold is randomly playing to start the season. But yeah, Trey, you've got your fancy. I talked about my charts. You've got your fancy chart system going for the NFL betting picks in there as well. So
didn't do so good last. There's been some weird anomalies this year. Like you just talked about who thought Bo Nix would go off. A couple other things. There was the 49ers, not last week, but 2 weeks ago, gave up a big lead to the Rams. Like there's some crazy things going on. And who thought Atlanta? Like Atlanta's actually not. Atlanta and Tampa Bay right now are probably two of the hottest some of the better teams right now, Buccaneers specifically. And I took them to. I'm going for like 4 straight Thursday nighters today, so I'm pretty excited.
Oh yeah. Oh, and who thought about the Washington Commanders and Jaden Daniels being as good as they've been so far this year?
You know, that's a funny thing because all I've heard was if Washington got the number 1, they were going with Daniels over Caleb Williams, no matter what. So they got their guy, and I think the thing about the Commanders is I think they have a little bit better of a team than the Bears around them. The Bears did get lucky with all their first-round picks they got from Carolina, but
they've kind of blown some of it. I feel like a little bit, and it hasn't paid off. And then just every top player in the league is injured in the NFL, and that's been frustrating for people playing NFL fantasy. I know I was just talking about a pre-show. It has not gone the way I envisioned to start the year. I'm 0-4 in our Discord league. I'm 0-4 in my other main league. 2-10 across all of my leagues, but we'll see if we can get back on track this week. Important week in CFL fantasy as well this week because it's playoff time. If you play Game Zone Fantasy, I think if you finish top 30 in any of the first 17 weeks, you make the Champions League that they do in Game Zone Fantasy. I never make the Champions League. I play fantasy to get a high consistent score each week to have a solid overall total. I'm not the one who goes and takes the shots necessarily at the boom or bust plays that lead to, a top tier finish, for example. I'd rather be consistently great than up and down amazing, so to say. So I haven't made that league, but if you have, good luck to you. And in our CFL fantasy leagues, it's also playoff time as well. And it is me versus Adam in our podcast network fantasy league round 1 playoff matchups this week. So, Adam couldn't be here because he's too busy making sure he's saving his lineup properly. Is the joke I made on social media today. No, Adam had another commitment tonight. He'll hopefully be back again next time. But let's start digging into our 3 games of the week here, Trey. And there is a lot. There are a lot of playoff scenarios this week. We get down to this fun time of the year where each week there are new playoff scenarios that come out. And this one, I think, Hamilton is that team everybody's kind of watching right now because they've been on a roll lately. The Bombers go into Hamilton on Friday night. If Hamilton loses this game, Ottawa clinches a playoff berth, and the scenarios are convoluted, but Hamilton's chances aren't looking great if they lose this football game. They got 3 games left. It was looking great after Friday night last week when Hamilton beat BC, but then Toronto beat Montreal and Saskatchewan beat Edmonton, and that kind of hurt their chances. So the Ticats got to win to keep pace here in the East Division, and the Bombers could claim first place in the West Division if they win this week and Saskatchewan loses. So big implications from these couple of teams here. What's the major opening storyline for you between Winnipeg and Hamilton?
I guess it's got to be is it just the Boveralls? I guess is it that, or did Bo get special drinking water, or I don't know. Is he back? Is he the guy? Is this what we all said? Is this what I've been saying when I was shaking my head in the off season, going like Bo's gonna screw us over, right? At some point, is this what we're seeing right now? That's kind of what I'm looking at. And Winnipeg Saga, I'm glitchy.
I think we're both having some technical difficulties right now. I think I certainly am.
Okay, because I was like, my internet's been doing good lately. But maybe it's the weekly stream with you guys.
Yeah, we just throw it all out the window.
I try to make a fantasy move in the background and my computer freezes. Okay.
And I try to process your fantasy move in the background and my computer freezes.
There we go. So I don't know what anyone heard, but I said Bo and the Boveralls. I'm curious if I said, is this Bo screwing us over? Like I said, all off season and some part of the early season was going to happen, or is it just fluke? We'll see. And on Winnipeg's side, Well, I can say the same thing about Zach Collaros. Was last week an anomaly, or is he kind of back? Is he MOP, Zach Collaros? I think that's really what I'm interested in. It's the quarterbacks that both should probably retire, but have been playing like they shouldn't retire. So we'll see how it goes.
It's weird to look back 18 weeks into this season and go back and think about what we were all saying preseason. And we have been so hard on Bo Levi Mitchell for years. Like, I've given him no mercy in thinking that I didn't think he should have been the starter this year. I think it should have been Taylor Powell. And now I'm kind of in the camp of I'm rooting for Bo. And I was always to some degree, this is a legend. Like, over the past decade or so, Bo Levi Mitchell has been a legend in the CFL, and he'll likely go into the Hall of Fame at some point, I would think. And so you're kind of rooting for him to some degree to get back to that level, and it sucked to see the decline in play over the last couple of years, but it was just such a decline. I had no faith in him. Now I'm rooting for him, and Bo is honestly one of my top couple candidates for MOP this year. And I think he's going to be discounted because Hamilton's not going to make the playoffs. He's going to be discounted because people will say that he threw, all of those yards in garbage time. You can't fault him for that. I mean, it's his defense's fault for letting up 30 points a game that they ended in that state. And Bo's done nothing but deliver for the most part. He's been very, very good. So I'm a fan of what Bo has put together this year, and this is going to be the big test because Winnipeg's got that really strong pass defense. But when they played a couple weeks ago in Winnipeg, Bo did find some, and the Ticats offense did find a way to move the ball on them a little bit. We saw the same thing last week. McLeod Bethel Thompson, completely garbage time most of the game, found a way to move the ball on them. Trevor Harris did a couple of weeks ago. So seems like maybe there's elements of Winnipeg's pass defense giving up a little bit more there for Hamilton to exploit. But they do have a couple of key injuries on the offensive side of the ball. Shamar Bridges went down due to injury last week for the Ticats, and I believe there was talk today that he is going to be out for the season. Huge blow for them. I would say Bridges, if he qualifies as a rookie, is probably a front runner for Rookie of the Year in the CFL based on how well he had been playing. So that's a huge loss for them at receiver. And then Greg Bell has been, is it Bell? Is it Butler? Is it Bell? Is it Butler? Well, Bell left with an injury that game as well. And now James Butler is going to get the start again here for Hamilton. So some notable changes there on the offensive side of the ball. But let's talk about the Winnipeg side. You mentioned it. Zach Collaros, is he back? Is he not? Did you envision Collaros going from 9 touchdown passes in 13 games to suddenly 15 touchdown passes in 15 or whatever it was? 6 TD passes last week from Zach Collaros. Over 400 yards passing, the best game of his career. What the heck?
I remember I was sitting there with my lovely wife, and every game I say I predict how many interceptions he throws, and I'm usually pretty close. And I said 2 today, and I think it was like a tip pass early in the game, almost picked, and I said, "Yep, should have been picked. It's going to be a long day." And then after that, it was just completion after completion. Now, quarterbacks do a lot of work, but how many of those wouldn't have been caught if you didn't have Lawler and Wheatfield and Oliveira making that shovel pass where he wouldn't go down? You got to give a lot of the credit to the guys around him too, but I guess Collaros is the one getting it there. I hate that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, some of those passes, all Kenny Lawler does is make highlight reel catches against the Edmonton Elks. I either puts up 200-yard games against the Lions or magnificent catches against the Elks, because every time he plays them, he has at least one big play where you're like, how the heck did he catch it? Now, Lawler is the type of the guy that you'll throw the ball to him 10 times in a game and he'll make 3 spectacular catches, and then 7 will go incomplete because they go for those big plays and they try to target and use his height in double coverage like that. But yeah, the receivers made big plays. Collaros was on his game, and this was the best performance we've seen from him. I'm going to be so annoyed if Zach Collaros gets a nomination for most outstanding player, though, because I've seen talk of it even before this game lately of like, there's not a ton of good options out there. Winnipeg's been on a roll lately. Quarterback normally gets it. Collaros has done enough to get them the win. Collaros has not done enough to get them wins, I would argue, up until this past week, where they've really leaned on Brady Oliveira, who I think is probably, I think in the West it comes probably down to him versus Milligan out in Saskatchewan for most outstanding player. I think it's if the defense hasn't been lights out like it's been, they're not winning most of those games. And if they got an ounce of passing offense, this team is probably having an even better record than they are. So I'm not, to answer your question from before I went on my ramble, that I don't think I can't classify Collaros as back off of just this one performance. I need to see more consistency going forward, especially late in the year where sometimes he does trail off when it comes to playoffs and things like that. This game to me last week just more so looked like, the Elks forgot to show up in Winnipeg. Like, it didn't look like there was any effort there at all.
No, I agree. And it is like, again, it looked, they were moving the ball just enough again, like that you were like, oh, okay. And then they're punting it or going for it on 3rd and short in the red zone. And it was just very, I don't know, it was a weird game. It was one of those games where at halftime I was like, oh crap, we're up 34-6. Because again, I felt like Edmonton was moving the ball just enough sometimes where like it doesn't look like they weren't awful. Bethel Thompson in old garbage time, but 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Like normally that's a decent line, even though he only threw for 220 yards. But, and Racken ran for over 109. Like that's usually numbers to get you the win. Now, granted, 27 points can also get you the win in a variety of various CFL games. But yeah, I'm really interested in the whole MBT, and he's the starter, and he's the guy we need for a win.
We'll get into that when we talk about the Edmonton, Saskatchewan.
I guess we're here for Hamilton, but for Winnipeg, Hamilton. But I think Winnipeg. I'm looking forward to this game. I'm glad it's at 6 because I can watch it just before going to work and maybe miss like 5 minutes if I want to be on time. But I'm never on time for work. Not the bar when I work at. No, I show up when I want to show up. But this is gonna be a good game. I wouldn't count out Hamilton. My +4 and what's the? Wonder what their odds are. You talk and I'm gonna find what their just money line odds are.
All right, yeah, I'll let you do that. And let's start digging into the fantasy side of things as I want to talk about. You mentioned Lawler making all of those crazy catches, some of the receivers. If you go back to like earlier this year, Schoen goes down with injury, Lawler goes down. Things are looking bleak for that Bombers offense when we look at that receiver core where we're talking it's Nick Dembski and nobody else. And I think Wolodarski might have been injured at the time. Now you look at it now, I mean, Kenny Lawler, Nick Dembski, he is going to be a game time decision this week, I believe, Dembski with an injury, so keep an eye on that on the depth chart. But you talk about Lawler, you talk about Dembski. Ontario Wilson has looked fantastic. I wasn't a fan of his in the first 2 weeks, and then he had that 16 catches breakout game, and he has looked fantastic ever since, and he's definitely a mainstay going forward. Carrick Wheatfall has come back from injury and looked like a good big play guy. And suddenly this receiver core looks pretty darn good and now becomes more of a question almost of like, who do you go with from this team, from receivers in fantasy? And I didn't have any of them in my lineup last week. I missed out on the Bombers scoring fest because I looked at it as Collaros having 9 touchdowns in 14 games. And I did some analysis this week where to be a top 3 finishing receiver on the week, you need to score a touchdown because 80% or 88% of the top 3 scoring receivers, I believe was the stat, on a week score a touchdown. And there's not enough to go around for the Bombers. And then Collaros throws 6. So all of that to say, which receivers are you looking at in the Winnipeg Hamilton game here? On the Winnipeg side, I like Lawler, but I think I like Ontario Wilson as a play a little bit more this week because, again, Lawler will get those targets, but a lot of them go incomplete. I think Wilson's just been consistent all season long as this big play guy. He can be the big target guy. And Hamilton just shuts everything on the right side of the field down. And when I say right side of the field, I talk about on the depth chart. I know they flip back and forth, obviously, with boundary side and whatever the official names are. But especially with Dembski out, I think Ontario Wilson could eat in this game, so he would be a player I potentially look at. I think Brady Oliveira has to be strongly in consideration for play in this game as well. The Ticats have gotten better at shutting down running backs lately, but Oliveira is consistently at the top of his game. And ever since Chris Streveler left with injury, Oliveira is suddenly scoring touchdowns. He's got 3 in his last 2 games after not scoring before. So those are the 2 names I would say on the Winnipeg side that really intrigue me here. I'm not buying on Collaros. I'm not taking that chance here this week in this matchup. Although I think he'll run more against Chris Jones, his defense. But Oliveira and Wilson are the 2 most interesting to me on Winnipeg. Before I go into Hamilton, give me your names from both sides here.
Yeah, on Winnipeg, I'm liking Oliveira just in general because I think with only 6 running backs, I think he's my guy I want to go with. And even kind of debating about the captain thing, but I also like Lawler. I know it was again against Edmonton, who he lighted up against, but 33 points last week. Even if he scores half of that, that's a pretty good week, and it's playoff time in our league, so got to kind of risk it for the biscuit a little bit. But on the Hamilton side, my quarterback right now, get the overalls out because I might go with Bo Levi Mitchell. He's actually one of the more expensive quarterbacks, I think, this week too, if I'm not mistaken.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, he's 14.2. He's the most expensive quarterback. Claris is only 13.2. So yeah, I think Bo might get some yards against this Winnipeg defense, even if it turns out to be the game like last week. There'll be garbage time, and but we should call Bo put it on his overalls and jump on the garbage truck because he's a garbage time kind of quarterback, right? So yeah, and I think that's it. Let me see. Yeah. Do you have anyone else? Nope, that's it.
All right. Yeah, on the Hamilton side, I did think about Bo as well, but I really don't like the matchup against that Winnipeg defense. I think I do have a better option, but Bo has looked good. Bo Levi Mitchell in the last number of weeks in his last 4 games, he's averaged 20 fantasy points, and that includes 2 games against Toronto, a game against Ottawa, game against BC in there, so he's looked pretty good. The Bombers obviously struggle to stop the run, but as I dug into more this week, that doesn't lead to success of running backs against them because teams don't throw a lot to their running backs against the Bombers because they only rush 3 guys. They have that extra guy in coverage that kind of takes that away. James Butler is starting. He is one of the better running backs when it comes to catching the ball and getting targets, so that could be a potential play. I would put Butler into consideration despite the matchup. And because the Bombers do give up that many rushing yards normally, and we saw what Rankin did the last couple of weeks. Butler in every game but one that he has played this year, he has finished with more than 10 fantasy points. So he's been pretty consistent there. Of the Hamilton receivers, let's see, the Bombers, I mean, they're pretty good at shutting opposing teams down through the passing game, but they do give up some points or some touchdowns to left wideouts, which is where Stephen Dunbar will play this week in place of Shamar Bridges. So there's a Hamilton receiver. I kind of maybe lean Dunbar's direction, thinking he'll get some more of the work with Bridges out, or Keandre Smith. Keandre Smith looked really good last week, and honestly, I considered sending you a trade offer in our fantasy league for Smith because 10 targets last week, 92 yards and a touchdown for Smith. And again, Bridges was getting so many targets, and with him out of the way, those got to go somewhere else, and I think it goes to one of those guys. Those are our fantasy players to watch in this game. Let's get into our betting picks. We don't have historical records of how we've done the last couple of weeks. Trey hasn't been here. I don't do the work to go and maintain that when Trey's gone. And none of us were here to make our picks on the show last week. So fresh start here. We also don't have Adam in his coin. So if you rely on the coin to make you some coin each week, then you're kind of out of luck. Maybe get Adam to flip it afterwards. But we talked about Hamilton at home, 4-point underdogs against Winnipeg. Over under at 50. What are you thinking here?
Well, you were talking about potential underdogs this week too. If you're going money line, they're at plus 155, which is not that bad. That's pretty good value there. But yeah, looking at the spread, oh man, Bombers have been on a roll. I think I'm going to take Winnipeg minus 4.5. Unless something crazy. I know it's supposed to rain here on the weekends, but I don't know what that weather is like in Hamilton this weekend. But I think it will probably be around a touchdown game. And the over-under, Winnipeg hit that over last week, but Hamilton's defense is a little better. 30-20, though. I could see a 30-20 kind of game. I'll go over on that. I think I could see a 30-20 kind of game in the donut box.
I'm going to go with Hamilton at +4 on this one. Mm-hmm. Winnipeg has weirdly struggled against the Ticats in Hamilton the last couple of years, I feel like, especially when they've been as dominant as they have been. There were a couple trap games that they fell for there. I don't think this is a trap game, I should clarify. I think Hamilton right now is the second hottest team in the CFL behind the Bombers. So this is kind of two teams on a roll going head-to-head here, and I think Hamilton can find a way to get it done in this one. I think their defense has been pretty improved against Winnipeg just a couple of weeks ago. The Bombers looked awful in that game and somehow pulled it out in the end because the Ticats couldn't finish drives despite all of the turnovers. So I'm going to believe in the Bo Levi Mitchell magic here.
I'm going to switch. I'm going to switch because I forgot a stat. You made a good point. Thank you, Robert Dalton. Bombers have not won in Hamilton
against the Ticats in the regular season.
Never the Grey Cup. Yeah, the Grey Cup 2021 was the only time they've won in Hamilton since 2017. So maybe give me the +4. I still would be tempted to go Bombers money line if you're really asking me, but give me a +4. I'll still stick with the over because I think a 25-25 kind of game is very possible with these two MOP candidate quarterbacks.
Shout out to Daltz from the Rouge Radio podcast with that stat. I think that was the stat I was trying to recall too. I forgot who it was from. So we're both going Hamilton. I'm going to agree with you on the over on this one as well. I think that's reasonable to hit if these offenses can put some points up as well. Adam sent us his picks. I don't know if these are money line, spread, or whatnot, but he said let's go Hamilton. So
he's got obviously +4.5 or +4 in money line. He can have both. I don't care.
Yeah. So we'll give that to Adam here. And just checking up on the chat comments. Hello, Richard. Good evening. I see Richard's in the chat here. Feel free to send in your comments, folks, if you are joining us live. Should we move on to game number 2 here and keep things moving along? Game 2 of 3. The doubleheader on Friday night. I feel like it's kind of a weird setup this week where there's 3 games on the schedule. The last 2 weeks, we've done a doubleheader on Saturday, with one of the games being on CTV in the afternoon and then one of the games in the evening. It's a Friday night doubleheader with another BC game starting at like 9 p.m. Central Time. So, 10 p.m. for the folks out east. And then one game on Saturday in the evening and no CTV this week. It feels weird to me. But nonetheless, Calgary coming off the bye week, visiting the Lions. The Lions are 7.5-point favorites in this game. Looking at the scenarios, do we have any scenarios for these teams? Calgary, they are currently at 4-9-1, last in the West Division. They're 5 points back of BC for third. This is kind of a crucial game for them. It's really putting Calgary out of the running, I feel like, if they do lose this one. Also, a Calgary loss this week and a Saskatchewan win and a Hamilton loss would lead to the Riders clinching a post-season berth. Calgary needs to win this one. BC kind of needs to make sure they stay on track as well. They're now third in the West Division at 14 points. What's the biggest storyline to kick things off here for you?
I don't know if this is a storyline, but I just want BC to lose because Hamilton crossing over would be wild. Like I only want Hamilton to beat the Bombers and Calgary to win just for that, just for that possibility. But other than that, I think BC's interesting. They haven't been as dominant as you would think, with BC losing to Hamilton just last week, which was a big win there for them, like you said. Then the week before that, losing to Toronto. They did beat Montreal and stuff. So it's just a little bit of a losing skid here. And I think I haven't. Have you? I don't know if I haven't really watched too much of the other games. Is Nathan Rourke just a little off? Is it the offense? Is it the defense? What are your thoughts on BC?
Well, I don't think Rourke's been moving as effectively as everybody thought when he came back, right? Like this past week against Hamilton, 264 yards passing, no touchdowns, no interceptions. He did rush for 2 touchdowns, so he did points on the board. The team put 29 points on the board as a whole. You'll take that most games and be happy with it, regardless if your QB is throwing for the passing touchdowns. But yeah, in recent weeks, I feel like Rourke has been good. He's been moving the ball decently, I guess, but not to the degree he has been before. Like we're talking about now 6 games and 4 passing touchdowns, and 3 of those came in that one matchup against Ottawa. So other than that, 1 passing touchdown in 5 games. Yes, he does have 5 rushing touchdowns in his last 4, but this isn't, when he last left the league, we were talking about 300, 400 yards passing every single game and 5 touchdowns at a time sometimes from Rourke. We're not seeing that right now, and it has some people wondering, when is Vernon Adams going to get back in for his chance, because he is fully healthy. I don't know what it is for BC. I think it's inconsistency across the board. One week the defense looks better because Matthew Betts is there and getting pressure on the quarterback, and then the next week the defense is looking like it's struggling. Receivers dropping balls. They've had some injuries there as well. Alexander Hollins is still out on the injured list. Now Javon Catoy, I believe, is questionable, and I don't think made the depth chart this week. Justin McInnes has been banged up at times, but is still playing. So it's a mix of everything, I think, lately for the Lions, that they started the season so strong, and ever since they have just been slowly... I look at it, they're 2 wins in their last 5, I think it is. 2 wins in their last 8 before in total. Suddenly the dominant class of the West Division, or one of them, is now very much in a fight for a playoff position here.
Yeah, I'm just noticing their point differential is -1 right now. So, which usually tells me they, games are close too, right? If they're like that. And I don't know. This game's in BC. They're not, they don't have crazy home field advantage. Only 4-3. They're also 4-4 against the division. So, but Calgary also hasn't won a game on the road. So.
Yeah.
So that McMahon home field advantage, huh? They're not. They were doing better earlier, but 4-3-1, yes, is better than 0-6. I don't know. This game's very interesting to me because Calgary, I wasn't high on them, and then they looked good for a little bit, or Mayer looked okay, and then again he just disappeared too, I felt like, and it's just kind of weird.
Yeah, like I said, this is a big matchup between these 2 teams, and it's interesting to me to see that I feel like 2 of Calgary's best games this year have come actually against the Lions, where they shut that Lions offense down. Outside of the Winnipeg games, I feel like those were Vernon Adams' worst games of the year. That was earlier in the season when we were talking about Calgary as an up-and-down team. Now we're just talking about Calgary as a down team. They haven't won a game, I think, in their last 5. I think 4 losses and a tie in there. And they've quickly descended to the bottom of the West Division, but a couple of wins gets them right back into it, and has been the play of the quarterbacks. Jake Mayer hasn't looked fantastic either. Hasn't thrown for over 300 yards in his last 4 starts. They tried to mix in Logan Bonner and get him a start in there. He threw 5 interceptions in that game. So Calgary's offense, as much as I want to talk about inconsistency from BC's offense, I think Calgary has been worse in that regard, where, you just don't know who's going to play and what you're going to get from them. There was the rotation at running back. There was the rotation at quarterback. They might throw the ball to 9 different receivers in a game, and nobody gets their mojo and nobody gets anything going for the Stampeders right now. And last time Calgary was on a football field before the bye week, Rock Armstead rushed for 203 yards on this Stampeders defense. So, as a little preview for when we talk fantasy, what kind of day is William Stanback going to have against this team that can't seem to stop the run right now? Remains to be seen. Speaking of BC running backs, though, they acquired a new one this week. The one trade at trade deadline time this week, Jeshurun Antwi traded from the Montreal Alouettes to the BC Lions for a Canadian running back for, I think it was a 3rd round pick next year. What do you think of that trade?
I'm so terrible at value in the CFL. Like, what's a 3rd round draft pick? But yeah, I think Antwi, I was kind of high on him. I think I took him in our fantasy draft thinking he would get more reps than Fletcher, and it just happened to go to Fletcher, right? So, we'll see what BC does. I can't imagine he's going to. I mean, we say that we're going to say like, oh, he's probably not going to see much of the ball in the last 3 weeks. But then again, guys have been play a week or two, and then they disappear or they're not on the roster anymore, and here and there. So I don't know. I hope he gets an opportunity somewhere, and I don't know if BC is the place, but yeah.
Over under, how many weeks does it take for the Lions to try to pull off the dribble punt? The Jeshurun Antwi special.
Oh, I hope never. I hate it. I hate it. We're not rugby, man.
We now have all of the punting fun in BC. We have Antwi and his dribble punts, and then we have all of the punts that hit the scoreboard. When is that becoming a thing we could bet on whether or not the ball's going to hit the scoreboard? We're going to get the ref with another fun reaction to it.
It's just weird that happens. I don't feel like it's happened that many times before.
I think they got a new scoreboard, new Jumbotron this year.
Because I know was it Dallas or something? One of the Dallas or Indy? Dallas. I think Dallas, they had a new scoreboard, and it happened like a bunch in the first few weeks. And the NFL was like, Jerry, you got to fix it, like now, kind of thing. So that's just fun. But it's as long as it's the same ref, it doesn't care.
Yeah, Ben Major for president or prime minister. I guess prime minister, or at least to take over as my favorite referee when Andre retires. Which I hope is never. I hope Andre never retires.
I got too excited when they announced Andre, and a guy in front of me said, "You actually like that guy?" And
Andre Prue is the best ref in the CFL.
That's what I said. That's what I said. And then every flag he turns around. You still think that? Yeah. It was a penalty, but anyway. Yeah. I mean, I like. You know what? Side note: I like the CFL refs a lot. They have a little bit more personality than sometimes you see the NFL ones. I don't even understand half the NFL ones because they got that sick Southern accent sometimes. And I'm like, I don't know what you said. So.
Richard's correcting me in the chat. And it is the same scoreboard, but maybe some new speakers that hang lower there. And also was talking about the Lions and said, inconsistency, absolutely. BC defense first half allowed 3 first downs and like 35 yards of offense, and then finished the game with almost 400 total yards against. So we've got to put that 60-minute game together, and not too many teams are doing it this year. Interestingly, with the acquisition of Jeshurun Antwi, the Lions on the depth chart this week have 3 running backs set up on there. I do not remember a time recently where that's been the case. They've been one of those teams more than anybody else that starts one running back, and that's who they'll run with, and they'll have David Mackey in at fullback and spell him in if they need a running back. And Mackey is injured, so maybe that's where Antwi comes into play, more kind of that Mackey role, perhaps. But over the last few years, it was the only running back you saw was James Butler. The only one was Taquan Mizell. The only one this year was William Stanback every game. So we'll see how much he rotates in with his fellow former Montreal Alouette. And from the Montreal side, I kind of get it as well. Antwi really hasn't been used at all this year for them. And they've got Sean Thomas Erlington, similar Canadian running back. as a backup there behind Fletcher, who has actually gotten in for more plays and looked good. So if you can get an asset in terms of a draft pick back, I don't hate the move for Montreal side of things either.
No, especially assuming that they're going to have a late draft pick likely.
Right.
So you would think at least top, if they finish first in the East, you're probably thinking, I don't know, 7, 8, 9. So, yeah.
But yeah, the trade deadline came and went, and that's the only trade we got this year. So we'll see if that's the one that puts BC over the top, as some recent Bombers trades have helped them. You never know. But seems less crucial of a deal, but still a notable one. Let's talk fantasy for this game. Let's see. Do you want to go first, actually, on this one? Talk about who you've got on the... Do you got anybody on the Calgary side, I guess we'll start with.
Right now, I don't, but I could look and say a couple of people. I would... crap. Can you hear me?
I think so. Yeah, I think we're good now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're good.
There we go. Okay. I'll take a look here. I was tempted about the Calgary defense just because it was cheap. But then I thought, maybe this week spend a little more on that. Again, I haven't been opposed to Mayer. He's had good moments here and there. He did put up 19 against BC earlier in the year, which would be, and then he put actually 24 too another time. So that'd be a big, if you can repeat that, that's a big 48 points if he's your captain. Other than that, no. Do we go into BC or just Calgary?
I'll just throw stuff in while we're talking about Calgary here first. Yeah, it's tough because, again, I talk about how crucial a touchdown is for receivers to be upper echelon. But I look at a guy like Reggie Begelton, who only has 3 on the year and hasn't had a touchdown catch in his last, 8 games. But yet his average placement among wide receivers in the last 3 games has been 10th, and on the season is 12th. Like he's been really good because he gets a ton of targets. And if you're not going to get a touchdown, you want a guy that gets 8+ targets. And in 5 of his last 7 games, he's gotten 10 or more. So Calgary's got to lean on him. They got to let him make plays. So I think Reggie Begelton is a guy that I consistently put in my lineup. 2 weeks ago against Saskatchewan, disappointment with 8.3 points. But before that, his lowest total was 13.2 in his last 5 or 6. So I like Begelton as kind of my only Stamps receiver. I potentially like Dedrick Mills because he has been looking better lately. He picked up a touchdown last time out. He's got 11+ points in his last 6 games as well. So he's been pretty consistent now that they're giving him the ball. Potentially a decent matchup against BC. But I'll flip over to the BC side of things and then come back to you on the Lions here as well. I think William Stanback is potentially a smash start this week because the Calgary Stampeders do give up. Hang on, where did I had this somewhere? 125 rushing yards a game. And last time out, it was 200 to Raquel Armstead. I think Stanback's going to have a fantastic day. I think he has gotten 15+ carries in 5 of his last 6 games. He's been over 90 yards in 5 of his last 6 games. And he does have the potential to get some passing work in there. So I would lock Stanback likely in as one of my 2 running backs this week. And I think Nathan Rourke is probably the best quarterback play of the week as well, because rushing quarterbacks are very important as well. I think I'm trying to find back my fantasy stats here, and I got to scroll a little bit to find what did I say on quarterbacks last week. I don't remember the exact number now, but I think it was something like 9 of 16 weeks, the number 1 scoring running quarterback had a rushing touchdown. And Nathan Rourke, of all of the ones playing this week, is most likely to get you a rushing touchdown. He's got 4. He's got 5 in his last 4 games. So I like Rourke as probably my top QB play, and Calgary's defense hasn't looked great this week. Not sure how I feel about any of the BC receivers, though. I've been kind of out on them a lot more lately because he's kind of spreading the ball around a little bit more. What do you have from the BC side?
Only one BC line. I'm tempted about Rourke. It's between him and Bo. I'll be honest about that. But my one potential flex play, a little value play, I just added him in our league. Let's go with Stanley Berryhill, the 30. He only picked up 9.7 last week against Hamilton, but I think Calgary's defense, and he's getting the starting gig, it looked like, on the outside receiver spot. So let's go for a little value play at 2.5K, and that can save some money elsewhere. And thanks, Richard. I'd worked so hard on that buy. I wanted that buy so bad. Man, I didn't think I had it when I lost. I thought Mike was going to pass me. But
yes, congrats to finishing second in our Discord league, Trey, earning that first round buy. Richard's in the YouTube chat here tonight. Me and him play in both CFL and NFL leagues this week, so that's fun. Good luck to you in the playoff matchup there as well. No, the BC receivers, kind of why I'm out on them this week, is last week it looked so perfect for Keon Hatcher to finally have that breakout game, positional matchup-wise against Hamilton, and he got you like 5.8 points, and they all came on catches in the final drive there. And teams don't throw to the right of the quarterback against Hamilton, and yet BC was trying to force that more there. So I'm not in on any of the receivers right now. I don't trust it, but I do trust Rourke. I do think Rourke's rushing ability makes him a top play, and William Stenback as well. Betting picks for this game. Let's talk about those here quickly. I think we've gone through our fantasy options here well. Interesting line. 7.5 points. The Lions as the favorites on this one. I struggle so much with these big spreads.
Yeah, I hate them too. And then again, I got to get my NFL mind out of my head because usually a division matchup, you take the plus 7.5 because there's never blowouts. But this is the CFL; it's a little different. Oh man, is BC going to win by a touchdown and a rouge? Likely, I don't know, man. Give me BC 7.5. We took the underdog in the other one, so I'm going to take the favorite here. Again, yeah, and the over-under. I'll go under 53.5. I think BC could easily get 30, 35, but watch Calgary only get 10.
Yeah. I'm going to agree with you on the under. I think it's a really high total, so I kind of lean towards the under on it. But I am going to take the Calgary Stampeders plus 7.5 on this one. That's kind of just been my general rule, become my general rule when the spread is this big to take covering the points because the CFL is so unpredictable. And in the NFL, honestly, it's becoming like that too. I think I saw a stat this week that every 8+ point underdog has won this year. It has ended up winning their game outright in the NFL or something like that, which is crazy. But there are a couple of things. Yes, Calgary has looked bad at times. Yes, they haven't won a game on the road yet this year. But I thought their defense played pretty darn well against the Lions twice earlier this year. So if they can mimic that, I like their chances of keeping it close. I'm not. Both of these teams have been shaky at times lately. So give me the point coverage in a closer game. I'm willing to take the chance on that. Adam in this game picked, drum roll please, he's picking the Calgary Stampeders. Again, is that money line? Is that spread? I don't know. We didn't give him the spread lines ahead of time, so I'm going to assume it's money line.
Yeah, I guess so too.
Quick question here in the chat. Is this their first game playing Nathan Rourke? Yes, it is. This year, Vernon Adams played in those first two, but I kind of draw them the same comparison between those two. They're both very mobile quarterbacks. They can pass it really well, and they took that rushing ability of VA out of it, and they took his play out of it pretty well. So I kind of mimic it of not being that much difference in this scenario. Final game of the week here as we move into it's the Saskatchewan Roughriders and the Edmonton Elks. Another crucial matchup here, one of the more crucial ones in the West Division. Edmonton, kind of 2 weeks ago, we were high on them. They made it up pretty high in your power rankings. And now things are looking dicey because they lost 2 straight to the Bombers. They didn't look good in the first. They got blown out in the second one. And my goodness, Edmonton has given up 100 more points than they have scored this season. I just noticed on the board. They got to get a win here against Saskatchewan. They're 5 points back of them in the standings, 4 points back of BC, and they need the win here to keep pace. Saskatchewan, of course, is trying to clinch themselves a home playoff game, trying to clinch themselves a playoff spot, trying to keep pace with Winnipeg for first in the West Division. So big matchup, big divisional matchup between these two teams. What do you want to talk about first?
Well, first I want to say this is why I don't move teams up the power rankings very often, because once I do, then they lay an egg, So, but I don't know. I think Edmonton's a very interesting case because why are we starting Bethel Thompson? I don't understand that. I don't think anybody outside of the coaching staff maybe understand. I don't even think they understand that. Things were supposed to get better when they got rid of Chris Jones, and it looked like it. And then I don't know what they're doing. I think it's a very interesting game. They had must win on both sides. Saskatchewan's, far from clinching a spot. Edmonton's on the bubble. Both teams have had some very, very good moments, and sometimes they've had some really crap moments. So I think this could be. You want to talk about unpredictable of the CFL? I have no idea. This could be a 50-0 game either way, or it could be a triple overtime thriller. I don't know what it's going to be.
Well, let's dissect the quarterback situation for Edmonton. Coming into last week or 2 weeks ago in Edmonton, Trey Ford gets the start. Elks turn over the ball a ton. Ford gets yanked late in the game. Understandable decision to pull and put MBT in for the rest of the game there in that one. And so I guess to backtrack, they put Ford in because Jarius Jackson said he doesn't believe in a guy losing his job due to injury. Ford was playing well before the injury. Yes, Bethel Thompson was playing well now, but Ford's the guy who's going to get the start. Then they come into the home in Winnipeg, and Bethel Thompson gets the start because they now felt like he gives them the best chance to win the football game, to win a football game. And I don't agree with that. Again, still against a real strong Bombers pass defense. I think the mistake when Trey Ford was playing is not enough designed runs for him. He ran once in that game, and the Bombers are really good at containing them on the run, but at mobile quarterbacks on the run, but they didn't really use Trey Ford effectively when they put him in. So whatever, okay, they decide to put McLeod Bethel Thompson in there. The team's getting blown out early in the game. It's, 34-6 at halftime, I think you were saying, or something like that. Yeah. Something like that. And everyone's saying, well, surely you have to put Trey Ford in there at that point. I actually think it was the right decision to kind of stick with Bethel Thompson after they initially put him in because, it's 34-6 at halftime, but anything can happen in the CFL. And we saw Edmonton get a quick touchdown drive, and maybe they get a momentum and get another quick one there. And I think they were at a point in the game where you can't run the ball really much anymore. You kind of have to pass when you're down that much. And Bethel Thompson is the better passer and gives you the better chance to make the comeback at that point. So I get why they stuck with him throughout the rest of that game there. Going forward, what's the right answer? I don't know. I really don't know anymore for Edmonton. I would probably start the mobile quarterback and Trey Ford against the Riders. I think each game that passes now where you don't start Trey Ford diminishes your chances of keeping him in the offseason, honestly.
Yeah, and you would think that they would want to keep him because Bethel Thompson's no spring chicken. Like probably I thought he looks old. Like he looks older than what he is. But he's got to be up there with Caleros and Bo Levi, you would think. So only probably has a year or two left. And what's his commitment like? Is he going to want to go back to somewhere close to home next year? Even if he does want to play, right? There's all these options. So you would think that they would try. And I understand the whole like you got to take your best chance, but you also want to develop the young guy. There's that weird balance we see. Is it, do you start the guy I know Trey Ford's not a rookie anymore, but that's my point. He's not a rookie anymore. I think that it might, yes, pull him after a 4 pick or a 4 turnover game. But I think not starting him the next game was, again, the wrong choice in the long. Even if they still lose against Winnipeg, you've just smashed this guy's confidence, and he should be your future. Bethel Thompson, like I said, has probably got a year, 2 left best. So I have no idea what they're doing, and again, it sounded like Jarius Jackson was behind him. Oh, he's not going to lose his job because of injury, but we're going to yank him after one miserable game.
It seems the backwards almost of the football is very much a what have you done for me lately business, but it feels backwards where you're probably looking at the pedigree of Bethel Thompson, Grey Cup champ. He's had fantastic seasons, been around the league for a long time. The veteran's going to help us get it done. You look at records of every non-Trey Ford quarterback versus the record of Trey Ford over the last 2-3 years as a starter. Ford clearly has given them way more chances to win football games. So, I was a little disheartened to see Ford only get the one game and nothing else after that. And it's probably going to be Bethel Thompson again this week. I don't know if that's been confirmed, but I imagine it is. I'm pretty certain it's going to be the case. So we'll see. We'll see how that plays out for Edmonton. But they're kind of on life support here this week as well, because if they lose to Saskatchewan, now Saskatchewan's 7 points ahead of them. I don't think Edmonton can catch them. And then they're 4 points back of BC at that point. If BC loses, and they would have to win out to catch BC here. So it's kind of win or go home here for the Edmonton Elks at this point. And I wonder if they do lose this week, then do we suddenly start seeing Trey Ford in the final couple of games of the year? Because now we don't need to win, so now we're going to focus on developing our quarterback.
See, to me, that's almost backwards still. I get what you're saying, but I would almost do it the other way. When the season's almost done, then that's when you put Bethel Thompson in, because you don't want Trey Ford, getting needing surgery on 3 torn ligaments like Strevy, or like that, or something like that. You don't want anyone to get hurt, but maybe the guy who again only has a year or 2 left anyway, not your potential franchise guy. No one wants to get hurt, but I don't know. I think that I'm really interested. Again, you thought I wonder if there's still maybe some just stupid culture still left in that organization from Chris Jones. I guess he hired all these guys they all still were one unit, and he left, and then these other guys kind of got promoted, this or that. So I wonder if they maybe need to do a little bit more of a clean sweep at some point, but I don't know.
Yeah, because by and large, this is the same roster. As much as we talk about Chris Jones was the problem, this is pretty much the same roster that Chris Jones built. That suddenly we were saying, they're winning, and it was just a coaching matter. And now they're struggling again. And how much were those couple of wins over Calgary and that win over a beat-up Saskatchewan Roughriders team that was on a downward slide? And I think they may have picked up a win over BC. Again, they were on a slide too. How much of that was actually, just favorable matchups, and now they faced a tough team? And how much of the last 2 weeks, though, is they just played a Winnipeg team that started the season 2-6 and is now 9-6 and has won 7 straight games. So it's hard to gauge where Edmonton's at, and I think this week is going to really tell us where they're at, and it's going to tell us whether it's too little, too late on the Edmonton side. Let's talk about Saskatchewan a little bit, though, because they started strong. They started 5-0. You had big hopes for Saskatchewan this year, 14-4 season. I think you missed the mark slightly. Slightly on that one. Winnipeg has also passed 7-11, I should add. So this is not the year as much as it looked like it was going to be. You were close. You were on the right track, and then they just did it to spite you. I think they gave you that confidence. But 7-1 now for the Riders. They had that terrible slide of winless in 7 games, and now suddenly I believe they've won their last 2. Yes, yeah, they won by 8 2 weeks ago over Calgary. A big divisional matchup there. They really shut down the Ottawa Red Blacks this last week, as much as they lost so many guys due to injury in it. Do you feel like the Riders have kind of corrected the course a little bit, or are you still in uncertainty territory with them?
I'm still a little uncertainty with them, I guess. I want to see a few things in a row. They haven't. Again, you said 2 in a row, but what was Edmonton on? And then they, again, laid an egg, right? So, and it's injuries. We're getting to that time of year where people need to start coming back to some degree, and I guess maybe they're getting a little bit healthier there in Riderville, but.
Oh, they're dead. They are not. They are not, though.
Oh.
They are in some categories. Like, I think Roland Milligan did miss a couple of games, and he's been back in, and he's probably going to be the Defensive Player of the Year, or at least the West nominee. So that's huge, having a guy like him back. But Raquel Armstead left the game with an injury. He is out. AJ Ouellette's still, getting better, limited in practice, but he is still out. So I think Frankie Hickson is likely starting at running back this week. Sean Bain didn't practice after getting injured last week. He is out this week on offense. Those are some of the bigger names here. Jacob Brommer has been a good fill-in on the offensive line. He's out this week as well. So they are having some big injuries. It's not as bad on the injury report, I believe, as I thought it was going to be when 4 receivers went down this past week for them. But I'd love to see the number of injury totals between these teams, like year to year, for example, and see how they compare, because it feels like Saskatchewan has just been on another level this season.
Yeah, I guess so. But we also said that last year when they had how many guys hurt themselves with the same injury in training?
Yeah, true.
But I mean, I don't know. It's football, right? So it's unfortunate. But I think if there's one team that I'm still a little worried about, I guess late, that could do this turnaround a little bit, I guess it would be them. Because I guess how things are heading, they're probably going to get second or third unless they really go on a slide here. And then again, all it takes is one win at home against BC and one win on the road against Winnipeg, which they
and that's where that problem comes in, right? Of the last 5 years, that demon you face in the playoffs, trying to get through them.
Yeah, so I mean, I could see it. It's just as likely them winning 2 games on the road in the West and then winning the Grey Cup as it was Winnipeg doing it in 2019.
Yeah.
And or they could be the team facing Montreal. Everyone thinks that's the heavy favorite. It's going to be like a -8.5 Montreal Grey Cup, kind of like what it was last year, but reversed, right? And I could see Saskatchewan winning that if they get healthy. So I'm still. They're 14-4 in my heart. If it wasn't for injuries, I think they'd be 14-4.
My feeling on the Riders has been so up and down this year. When they were winning 5-0 to start the year, I thought they were winning despite so many flaws, like the injuries, the penalty problems, the discipline, and I thought this team is going to come crashing down, and they did, right? Because those flaws are going to catch up to them. But now on the losing patch they had, I kind of felt like, no, this is a pretty darn good football team that is just losing games in stupid ways, and eventually that's going to correct, and it kind of did for a little bit with Edmonton. And now I feel like it kind of has a little bit for the Riders. You look at the talent, like Trevor Harris, when he's on his game, can be one of the top quarterbacks in the CFL. Raquel Armstead brought a boost to that offense. I know he got injured this week, but Bertrand Houdon looked pretty good filling in for him. The Riders keep finding new wide receivers out the wazoo that seem to be able to deliver. They are looking so set with young, good wide receivers. And then we talk about some of their players on defense that have really, made an impact this season as well. And Brett Lauder just made 7 field goals this past week, I think it was. So that's good. They're a good football team that had a rough patch where they just couldn't get it done, and now they can. And momentum is a funny thing where 2 wins make it 3 with a big win over a divisional matchup here against Edmonton, and suddenly this could be a team getting on a roll and getting hot at the right time down the stretch to get that home playoff game, and then who knows where you go from there if you're the Riders. I think anything's possible for the team at this point.
No, I agree.
Let's get into fantasy picks for this game. I'll go first on the Riders side here. Trevor Harris. Do you take the Trevor Harris shot after what Zach Collaros did to the Elks last week? I would consider it because he's got a decent floor. He does pass a lot. He's probably one of the most heavy passing quarterbacks in the CFL. But I also think Edmonton might course correct a little bit here, where they're not going to give up the 6 passing touchdowns necessarily again. So I would put him kind of middle tier quarterback for me this week. Picking running backs against the Elks is always the way to go, and that is because they give up an average of 18.3 fantasy points to starting running backs, which is just an atrocious number and a ridiculous number for them to average against. So Frankie Hickson, I presume, is going to get the start, although Thomas Bertrand-Hudon did look good last week. Check the depth chart when it comes out. Hickson had some unflattering weeks in a row back when he was getting the starts, but I do think the matchup is good there, and he is a cheaper running back option potentially. Take your pick of Saskatchewan wide receivers. Some of them are banged up. Some are going to get some good playing time in there. I thought Dell Duncan Busby got some time to play last week after everybody else got injured, and 7 catches on 7 targets for 92 yards. He looked pretty good. But my favorite rider receiver play week in and week out, and he does have a good positional matchup this week, is Keyshawn Johnson, because last week, 7 targets, 6 catches, 101 yards, and he has put up 10 plus fantasy points every week dating back to week number 8 now. So he has been so consistent as a top receiver option. He's got a good matchup, and he's probably the receiver I'm leaning towards, and he's currently an option for my lineup. What do you got on the Riders side?
Well, I've been out of it, so I didn't realize Armstead was injured because they don't have that on Fantasy Game Zone. And I just checked the injury report. He is listed as out this week. So I kind of probably will, which is again annoying because Frankie Hickson is listed as injured on Game Zone, but he's on the injury report. He's set as in. But yeah, I probably will make that switch to Hickson from Raquel Armstead then if he is a starter. And then it's just Saskatchewan or both sides. I wasn't thinking.
Either or. If you want to get in your Saskatchewan or your Edmonton picks too before I give mine, that works as well.
I just got one. I liked what he was doing against Winnipeg. He had a couple good games against Calgary before that. He's been pretty consistent as of late. He has laid a couple ostrich eggs this year, but give me Eugene Lewis from the Edmonton side. Whomever will go the formal sense is in the quarterback position. They got to throw it to somebody. And I think it'll be Eugene Lewis or Gittins. So that's kind of my go.
I like the Eugene Lewis play. If I look at the number of targets, left wideouts average 7 targets a game against the Riders, which is the most of any position. The Riders give up a lot to. There's a lot of passing against the Riders defense because you can't run against them for the most part. And Eugene Lewis has a touchdown in 5 straight games and has been on average in his last 6 games, he's been on average a top 8 wide receiver every week. Yeah, that's pretty darn good. He's getting the target share. He's got 7 plus targets in 5 of his last 6 games, 5 touchdowns in 5 straight games, especially if they fall down early, again, like they did last week. Bethel Thompson's at quarterback. He's going to throw 30, 40 times a game. And Eugene Lewis is one of his favorite targets, and he's kind of the guy I want in that category for Edmonton receivers. I think he's my favorite play and probably one of the safest plays from both a volume and a touchdown perspective. I feel like Gittins is more your volume safe play, although he's been kind of disappointing in 3 straight weeks. And Tevin Jones is always going to be your big play guy. He might get you the big plays, but he's only going to get on a couple of targets. I compare Tevin Jones a little bit to Rashid Shaheed of the New Orleans Saints for any NFL fans out there, where he'll probably get you your 30-yard touchdown, but that will be one of his 2 or 3 catches of the day. So I would probably lean the safer play in Eugene Lewis. I don't know what to do with Edmonton's running back situation until we see the depth chart, and even then I might stay away from them because while they did run all over the Riders earlier this year, Derek Taylor for Bombers play-by-play radio guy did put out a stat that they run significantly less efficient with MBT at quarterback than when Trey Ford is at quarterback. And Javon Leake is healthy and ready to go, which means what does the time split between him and Justin Rankin and Kevin Brown look like? Might not be enough compared to some of the better running back options this week, so I might stay away there. Would you play McLeod Bethel Thompson at quarterback or consider him in the upper echelon?
Maybe this week, because maybe there'd be some, I don't know, inconsistencies on Saskatchewan's defense, but I'd rather Trey Ford, because you got that running aspect, but I don't think Bethel Thompson's running for the first down too much.
Yeah, I do like the mobile quarterbacks is so important, like I said, which is why I kind of lean away from him, but his stats look good. He's got 6 touchdowns in his last 6 games. Or 12 passing touchdowns, actually, in his last 6 games. So averaging 2 a game, and he's only thrown 1 pick in his last 6 games, which is actually pretty impressive. And has that ability to throw for quite a few yards. Hasn't really hit that many in recent weeks, but again, some tough matchups along the way. So, yeah, I'd throw him equally with Trevor Harris in that mid-tier of quarterbacks where you could get a pretty good performance. You might get your 20 points, but give me the rushing floor of a more mobile quarterback instead. And I would consider the Riders' defense. Well, actually, no, I don't know if I would consider the Riders' defense because Bethel Thompson really doesn't throw interceptions anymore, it seems. So I haven't really decided yet who my defense is going to be this week. I think there's pros and cons to each of them for sure.
I see it on the defense. I would stay away from the defenses in this one. I could see this kind of weirdly again, because like I think I said, I could see it being a 50-0 either way, or I could see it being, buzzer beater, some crazy, 60-yard field goal attempt that turns into a punt at midfield, kind of crazy. You know what I mean? I could see everything. I could see this one and I could see one team being up by 50 at halftime and the other team winning. It's one of those games where both teams have just showed, a lot of the teams have showed flaws, but this is one where both teams have showed a lot of flaws lately, but they've also had a lot of good. So it depends on which one Jekyll and Hyde, which one are we seeing?
Well, that's the question I'll ask you as we get into our betting picks.
Man, this one we need to 2.5 -2. Okay, well, let's risk it and go with the over. Again, 25. I could see both these teams putting up 25. There's going to be a pick 6, maybe, or a punt or a kick return or something, a couple of those. So we'll take the over. 26-25, I could see very well in the realm, though. -2. Give me Saskatchewan because I think it'll be. I hate the CFL in the points because a walk-off field goal doesn't necessarily mean it could just be the 1 point. Yeah, give me Saskatchewan. Because if this was NFL, I would take Saskatchewan -2 because it's going to be tied. Saskatchewan gets the walk-off field goal. It's money. Right. CFL with the rouge and the craziness of the game. Yeah, I'll still take Saskatchewan, though. This one's wild. Battle of the Green. I don't know. Who did Adam take? You tell me that first.
What do you think Adam took?
He took Edmonton. I don't know.
No, Adam took Saskatchewan.
And I'll take Saskatchewan because sometimes he's hard on them. So,
yeah, I'm leaning Saskatchewan here as well. I feel like Edmonton does, have their good games and kind of have the Riders number at times in the last couple of years. And I look back at that game where they completely ran the ball all over them. But then I look at every other game this year where nobody's really run the ball all over the Riders. So it's kind of, what's going to give here. And again, if MBT is in at quarterback, I don't know if they run the ball as effectively, although Justin Rankin did look really good the last couple of weeks. So I think the Riders' defense has the ability to shut them down a little bit. I like their offense to put up a couple of touchdowns on the day as well. So I'm going to take the Riders as much as I want to take 3 straight upsets. And I'm also going to go with you on the over because I think Saskatchewan's good for at least a couple of touchdowns. I think Edmonton will put up a couple as well, whether or not it's in garbage time or, a close competitive game. But I'm going to take the Riders and the over. And like I said, Adam took the over or took the Riders on this one as well. And that's it. That's our 3 games of the week for week 18. It's kind of this weird stretch here where we don't have much. Week 18 only has 3 games. Week 20 only has 3 games. We're down to the final couple of weeks of the regular season. Sounds like there's a pretty good NFL game going on tonight. I won't spoil the score for anybody, but yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, Thursday night football. I feel like is Thursday night football back, right? Like I feel like we had a good game earlier this year. Yeah. Buffalo, Miami was a decent game in that one.
They scheduled some good Thursdays because they changed the rule now. I think that it was before that only you could have a Thursday once or something unless you had a bye after. And I think they got rid of that where they could put more. You could put the same team twice on a Thursday. So I think that's to give more matchups because, again, Buffalo, Miami, if Tua didn't get hurt, that could have been way better of a game. Tonight's game is another division matchup. They don't usually do division matchups. Jets, New England was on a Thursday. That wasn't terrible. So, yeah, I'm liking Thursday, man. Al Michaels is good. Al Michaels is good stuff, man.
Yeah, for sure.
I listened to my favorite podcast. Al Michaels was on it. Because he started his career as the Cincinnati Reds play-by-play guy. And so they were talking about Pete Rose just passing. So he was the play-by-play. His first gig was the Reds when Pete Rose was there. And that guy's an encyclopedia, like how much he can remember about the clubhouse in the 70s. He looks like he's a little bored on Thursday Night Football presented by Prime, but he is still the all-time greatest. Him and Madden on Sunday night was the best. So.
You mean Tom Brady hasn't passed him yet?
No. I'll put Romo in my top 5. Tom Brady,
Tom Brady is not good on the rock. Did you hear or see the rumor or the talk that apparently Tom Brady really considered coming out of retirement this offseason to sign with the Chicago Bears?
No, I didn't see that. That'd be wild.
Apparently that was strongly considered.
Why? Why the Bears?
I don't know. I don't know.
Because I heard rumors that I've heard a lot that he might come to Miami with the injury now, and that was the team that he was supposed to go to before Tampa.
What age does Tom Brady have to get to before every time a quarterback goes down, somebody wonders whether he's going to come back into the game?
You know what? That's true. You know what's wild? Nobody's once said, "Where's Andrew Luck?" And he's still like 32.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the way he left the game.
That's fair too. Fair too. But the quarterbacks we hear of, the two that are never, I don't think ever going to play is Kaepernick and Newton. And you hear that a lot, like, oh, Newton wants to play, Kaepernick wants to play. They're never going to come back. But like, yeah, I would call Andrew Luck way more. Now, true, he stepped away from a good read, like for because he didn't want to turn into Tua.
Yeah,
but man, Tom Brady, I don't know. I thought too he's a part owner or trying to be a part owner of the Raiders too, so he can't play if he's a part owner. So, and I thought
he'll find a way.
Yeah,
I'm never going to rule out the possibility after Tom Brady went and publicly announced his retirement on social media, and then like a week later was like, just kidding, I'm going to play one more season, and then announced it again. Like, you've done this, you've pulled this move once. Like, I'm not going to trust ever again until you are physically unable to play football anymore that you're not going to contemplate the comeback.
I mean, man, I'll give it to him. I think there was some personal stuff going on.
That's fair. That's fair.
And with his wife or ex-wife and all that. And then, I have to think too, it would be such a thing. Like you and I can say, but again, like your whole, like let's say 20 years of pro and you count college, your whole life has been football and road trips and this, and this and that. And then just one day you're sitting at the couch being like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I've already thought of that. There's no way you and I are going to retire at our age and how the world is. So we may as well just get comfy working until 70.
Like, Pretty much. I think I'd get bored if I retired, honestly.
My dream retirement, buy a motorhome and just drive to racetracks across North America.
Nice.
That's it. And then that's all. And is that really retirement?
There we go. We'll get Trey podcasting in a different city every week.
Oh man, to retire now would be wild. That's that 80 million Lotto Max. I did not win it.
Shoot.
Anyway.
Are you sure? Because there's a comment here saying Trey has a nice fancy new microphone.
This is the one you bought us.
Is that the same one?
Yeah, it's the same one. I just haven't been using it because
I think it's the arm. I think it's the arm at the top that's looking fancy.
Oh, I've had this arm for a while. It just broke, and then I stopped using it.
Gotcha.
Then, I can set it up in the new office a little better than I could in the old one. So
I like it. Waiting for the documentary on the Andrew Luck story. Yeah, that would be a cool thing to see more info in, because that just came so far out of left field for sure. All right, let's get into wrapping things up here. We'll try to get out of here before an hour and a half. Like I said, I knew we were going to go there anyways. But we will be back, hopefully, fingers crossed. Again, last week, surprise week off. Hopefully no more of those throughout the rest of the season. We'll be here through the end of the playoffs, or into the playoffs and the end of the playoffs. And next week, it's week 19 preview. No weekly recap / Discord call-in show again next week with Mike and I, unfortunately, because I have a scheduling conflict there. So we'll miss out on that. Hopefully get a chance to catch up with Mike again in a couple of weeks. But we'll be playing previewing week 19 in the CFL here next week. We'll have 4 games to talk about at that point. And we'll talk about fantasy betting and all the major storylines there. In the meantime, check out the Discord again. We have lots of chatter going on there. Live game chats for each of the 3 games this weekend. CFL fantasy, extra stats, all the stats you can possibly want. I've got those for you there. Trey's got NFL betting picks for you going on there as well. Link is in the episode description. It's free to join us in the Discord, and also follow us on social media while you're at it, at CF Countdown Pod on X, facebook.com/CF Countdown Pod there as well. Check out all the other great shows from around the Canadian Football Podcast Network at CF Pod Network on X, Alternative Football Network at the official AFN on X, or alternativefootballnetwork.com. And I'll run through mine and then I'll hand it over to you. You can find me on X at CooperTrooper42. Probably just smack talking Adam for our fantasy matchup this week, really, is all I have planned there. A little bit fun back and forth. And you can find Adam at AdamStewart1 if you want to catch the other side of that as well. Mike is at Mike Garrell. Trey, so nice to have you back. Richard in chat saying the same thing as well. Thanks, happy to have you back here. What else you got going on these days? Where can people find it?
You can find me at TreyMB Harness on the X. Check me out on the Discord. NFL, the charts were great week 2. Like the first week I pulled them out, they were pretty good. And then they went to heck the last couple of weeks. And again, without ruining it, I don't think my charts were correct on tonight's game. But you know, it shouldn't count overtime. That's not.
I don't know if anything could have predicted some of these stat lines I'm looking at on the box score here tonight. We'll chat about it as we get off after we get off the air here. But check out the Discord. I'll have USC picks. I was supposed to record it today, but my co-host slept through his alarm today. So oh no, shoot.
He works the night shift. He was supposed to wake up a little early, but that's okay. It happens. We'll have him up for UFC 307 tomorrow. Richard, I benched Cousins in one of my leagues too, so I understand.
As somebody who is playing against the aforementioned member of the chat that has Kirk Cousins on the bench, I am very thankful right now. That would have been an instant drop to 0-5, I think, for me. So.
The league I benched him in is my dynasty league that I'm trying to tank it now. So
there you go. So great job. You crushed it this week. All right, let's get ourselves out of here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks for the live comments in the chat, whatever podcast platform you're listening on. We appreciate it if you do all the fun things, such as like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, share the show with your friends. Help us grow the show. We always appreciate that. On behalf of Trey, I'm Ryan saying thank you for listening. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.